PSG back to take home the final over Machi was off a steal from River, and like you mentioned too, AHQ coming back last week up against Taipei J team. Let's go ahead though and jump into draft. AHQ going to be on your blue side, PSG Talon on the red, and starting things off immediately with those just main pocket picks that we've seen pop out from PSG, getting rid of both the Nidalee TF as well as the Thresh.
Yeah, a couple of standard jungle bans here, of course, Nidalee and Graves taking over the meta from MSS onwards. And then we look at the Thresh. Kaiwing, 100% win rate on that champ, 6-0. It's Woody Nautilus all over again before yesterday's heartbreak. And honestly, I am here for it because we said PSG's bot lane, they're weak in lane phase relative to how dominant they are in team fights. And yet that playmaker of a champion goes a long way to remedy such things.
I do see, though, that Volibear being banned out, so a lot of jungle being taken away from Kongya. Does mean, though, for AHQ, they go ahead and first pick the Aphelios of the two bot laners in the PCS. Both Wako and Unified usually always get the priority on this champion. Interesting here if we have a Bard lock-in to start things off for Kaiwing.
So Bard is not a bad blind pick support, especially with Thresh off the table. Thresh is usually the best blind pick support, but taking that away does shove the priority of Bard up just that little bit. And that's, well, I would prefer to see the likes of maybe Nautilus or something, but at the same time, or Karma even with the Ezreal, but Bard makes it so you can't really play Leona, you can't really get away with Nautilus either, and these melee engaged supports that Ysera trends towards have now been counted out.
So we'll expect some heavy roaming to come out from Kaiwing. Meanwhile, though, back over to AHQ, it's Uniboy on one of his signature pickups when it comes to Season 10, of course. It's going to be the Zoe getting locked in.
Yeah, Zoe, of course, being that consistent poke threat, and as well as that, just taking away from being paired on the same team as the Ezreal, really does get rid of some of the crazier siege potential PSG could bring to the table. Really intriguing to see just what tank opts for into this matchup, because we've seen a heavy emphasis on global pressure, hence the TF ban, and I think we need to see some solid, consistent wave clear to really hold Uniboy down in that mid lane.
Or even tank trying to challenge Uniboy into the mid lane, possibly trying to go for some kills. That could also be another option. You mentioned also you wanted to see maybe the Nautilus on the first rotation for PSG. Was left open because of that Bard, and that is going to go on over to Ysera. And for River, it's going to be his favorite champ, obviously, the Lee Sin.
Yeah, gotta love Lee Sin, especially with Graves and Nidalee already off the table here. About as early game aggression focused as you can get, given the fact the bans have played out the way that they have. Pretty eager to see what AHQ choose to do here. Do they ban Syndra, LeBlanc, or think about Orianna or Azir as being the kind of mid lane champions they want to trim out? Keep in mind, both top laners still have pick of the litter when it comes to their pools. Wukong, Mordekaiser, all these big priority picks we've seen being whacked out across the PCS still in hand.
Do you see that Gangplank, though? Get banned away from Hanabi. That's, of course, one of his go-to pickups. Not going to have it here going up against Ziv, and possibly, again, maybe trying to save that for a blind pick, as, again, jungle being heavy focus now from PSG, as that was not secured for AHQ in the first rotation, as now really bearing down on Kongya.
Do you remember last week when we were like, the prodigal son returns, Ziv back in the top lane, and then he picks Ornn? GP ban doesn't make me too hopeful that we'll see a super big carry, and instead we'll probably see something with a fairly quiet lane phase. That being said, we have seen a bit of Kennen, like globally and especially in the PCS, so definitely could think about it. There's the Orianna we mentioned, does kind of rise up in prio once the Syndra's taken off the table, but does mean that tank will be held down in lane by Uniboy.
All right, so opting for, again, just trying to survive the lane phase on the side of tank and then try and apply pressure later on during some of those team fights. If you're AHQ, though, you mentioned maybe picking up the Ornn right here, just getting that frontline CC, and then see what else you want for Kongya.
Yeah, not a huge fan of it because Ziv is that hard carry, hyper carry, and with Ornn and Trundle as your top side, there is zero threat being put out by the AHQ top side. That being said, yeah, Ornn would make sense. It lets you play through Aphelios, get him big, play through Zoe, take over the map, or we could just see a wildcard lock-in like, well, the other top laner we mentioned, who is not a tank, but still kinda AFK in lane phase, as it were.
Yeah, you know, just kind of farming away until you have your first item or two, and then boom, level 6, level 11, get your teleport in after you get your second rank into your ult, and then we get to see some action, as that does appear to be the case here for Ziv with the Kennen lock-in.
Between Farm Fest Orianna in mid and the abomination that is Kennen top, I've never been more disappointed to get my draft predictions right. But yeah, really intriguing to see what PSG opt for into this. Of course, that GP counter pick is banned. I'm not a huge fan of Sylas into Kennen, but he can single-handedly carry fights if need be. The issue is, you don't want to take Trundle ult ever, you don't want to take Zoe ult ever, Aphelios ult is kind of meh, so you're just looking at Ziv and Ysera as being those prime targets for Hanabi this game.
Well, it looks like he'll be at least in the lane up against the Kennen most of the time, so maybe we can try and steal that and go for a teleport flank. That might be the opportunity, but for PSG, I'm kind of feeling right now you have a lot of scrappy early game coming out of your top section of the map.
Yeah, the top side's super volatile. Sylas, Lee Sin, get in your face, don't relent, just chase you down. Issue is, Kennen's remarkably hard to gank, Zoe can just chill back a bit. Orianna largely invisible for early lane phase, you mentioned, just heavy emphasis on the team fights. And so when these mid-game kind of unfortunate 15-minute mark kind of fights that PSG love to wait until do roll around, they should be able to take control of the game at that point. So you need to look at AHQ to take firm control before then.
All right, so have to see Kongyu actually make more of a bit of an appearance when it comes to his presence on the map, especially on something like a Trundle, which, again, the Trundle play in the PCS hasn't been all that spectacular, but maybe he could try and turn the tables, and we'll see how that one's going to pan out. As, again, getting the swords locked and loaded for AHQ, a victory here helps cement them at the top of the standings and puts them in prime position to take a playoff bye. PSG, though, still within striking distance and still with a game in hand behind AHQ, could look to try and catch them in the standings as we go ahead and get set loaded in onto the Rift. And I did ask production. Apparently our dolly cam is just boom, similar to how Liab likes to call their comms when their HP is gone. Everything's just boom. It happens. Must have boomed a tire. It happens.
I feel like this happens every first game that I cast.
Apparently, you, well, hey, at least the first 3 games it happened, so you didn't, like, feel out of the loop, I guess.
Targeted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't want to make you feel like you were the issue causing this, because I would never want you to feel that.
Thank you, Opal. I do like this from Kaiwing, by the way. So Bard, a lot of his strength to level 1 comes from just Q passive auto, a lot of dominance when it comes to actually trading. But you can sacrifice that a little bit and just put down some W's in the mid lane to keep your mid laner sustained up.
Ah, see? Give Tang a little bit of survivability, because we did mention this this lane phase should not be a bunch of fun for him when he's going up against Uniboy Zoe.
Yeah, Ignite on the Zoe as well does mean that Uniboy will be fishing for kills. Probably from the get-go, I'd say, like, if you can connect a Q onto the backline of creeps and the Orianna, then you are so happy and can just, you know, turn that small health lead into a lot of momentum for yourself.
So we'll see what that case is going to be. Both junglers going to be starting, though, on toward their blue, so we'll see them kind of swap sides of the map. Maybe we'll see Kongyu try and make something happen toward bot side with that Nautilus pairing. But we did want to focus more or less on toward, of course, Hanabi and River. That's kind of your early game threat coming out from PSG, and where we want to see a lot of the action, maybe with a roam from Kaiwing.
Yeah, again, we mentioned how volatile Sylas Lee Sin can be, especially in the early stages of the game, but Kennen, remarkably safe, very resilient to being ganked, just pops the E, runs away. Happy days for this Kennen pick. Even running Biscuit, by the way, to really hammer home that he's on full utility, sustained survivability duty.
Again, just wanting to farm away until he gets comfortable with his items and then can be that major team fight ultimate impact later on.
Yeah, definitely will be the case, but, ooh, okay, Tank.
Early. Tank, there you go, Kongyu making an appearance alongside Uniboy. We called it that Mad Team Duo strike first on the map, as that's going to be first blood over to the Zoe.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Bard W, not enough to save the Orianna there. It times out, it's not enough anyway. This Zoe plus Trundle combo, once they're on top of you, unrelenting. Cleanse for good measure. On a bubble? Sure. Can't cleanse the Trundle that's in your face, though. And the duo of AHQ just take a really clean first blood.
And this is what we were accustomed to back in spring almost all the time. This was usually the very first play that would always come out from AHQ, try and get Uniboy ahead, and then let him just dominate the lane. So now River might have to pay a lot of attention to try and assist Tank.
Yeah, definitely do have to try and bail out this Orianna. Of course, she is Orianna, though, so does have that reliable scaling. Does mean that we'll see PSG maybe take the back seat until that 15-minute mark that we mentioned. Level 11, beautiful time for Orianna to fight, but if you give Zoe too much room to breathe while you're just farming, expect Uniboy to rotate around the map and just take firm control there. Kennen has set up with stuns, Nautilus has set up with stuns, it's all beautiful setup for Uniboy to gank.
And you see the pings already coming out here as they see that wave going to be pushed in. Tank actually goes toward the top side of the map, hugging where he has that control ward, but Ysera hunting for a roam if Tank steps forward.
Definitely do have to be careful here. The Nautilus, pretty scary. Kongyu here as well, but revealed by a Scryer's Plume that was popped by Kaiwing on the bottom side.
Alright, so luckily for PSG, Kaiwing on his first roam is able to get a bit of luck in his favor on that Scrying Gloom. Will allow them to avoid any possible plays being happened in mid. Maybe if Tank gets some assistance from Kaiwing himself, already on that Bard, looking for that early play, and in comes River. We did mention might try and assist Tank, but Uniboy has an idea something's going on here. Distance gets popped, and he goes. Does have the flash available, though, and gets himself back to safety.
Yeah, the pincer maneuver from both lane bushes there, with Lee Sin coming through from top side, the Bard coming in from the bot side. It's an Orianna pre-6. She's not the most gank threat, but the duo of River and Kaiwing really did apply enough pressure to make the AHQ mid laner just be super respectful and back off just that little bit.
So again, now we get to see River finally make an appearance, get some pressure relieved, I guess, away from Tank, as Uniboy's going to be second-guessing for a little bit until he gets that flash back and available, or maybe he picks up a free one with that W passive. And you see Kongyu actually being tracked here by that ward that was laid down, so they have an idea what AHQ looking to set up for. Looks like to be the first dragon of the game.
Yeah, definitely do have to look at that first Drake as being a little bit of a building block towards the 25-minute-ish kind of close where this comp really starts to take over team fights. Of course, pushing towards that Dragon Soul as soon as possible, really helpful at forcing these mid-game fights.
I was wondering there from our observer, looks like they were confused what was actually in the pit. That is a Bard chime, I do believe. So, Kaiwing.
Astronaut Bard.
Yeah, it kind of just looks like a piece of trash on the ground. It's a little bit weird when it comes to that skin. I'm just saying, that they don't look like they are chimes. They're not meeps. I always get them confused. Nonetheless, you're starting to see your first components.
The ones on the auto attack.
Yeah, they're always on the auto attack. What do you say?
Or is it the other way around?
No, the meeps, he literally throws meeps at people. That's his passive.
Okay, yeah, alright. Or does he throw chimes at people and collect the meeps?
I think he just, like, wears it as a belt. River might be worn as a belt by the Trundle, as that's going to be the dredge line being locked down onto the Lee Sin, and nowhere for him to run, as that's going to be a very nice kill coming out. A great collapse from AHQ.
I mean, it's even in the Trundle quote. He likes his human with a bit of spice. This time around, the spice is the Nautilus hook, landing onto that Lee Sin. Good aggressive play from Ysera there to really set up Kongyu for success. And something I didn't touch on before was the fact that first blood gank for the Trundle gives him enough momentum to the point where he can actually make a convincing case to skirmish against this Lee Sin early.
Yeah, you even saw there. It looks like he's actually picked up the Skirmishes blade, too. Opted to go for the red smite, so just wants to try and lock down the main targets. And there you are. It's already AHQ invading into the jungle, getting the blue buff over to Uniboy, too.
Yeah, pretty crucial at that point to have the Zoe consistently able to clear out the waves with the Q, because honestly, all Orianna is good for right now is killing creeps. That being said, it will be a blue buff trade.
So no real big advantage being picked up there by AHQ, but still, again, River getting caught out in the jungle means Kongyu is able to make his second strike on the map, and so far that jungle matchup, it's looking clean here from Kongyu, as again, he catches out River, has to get the safeguard flashing on over the wall, is going to force a flash out from River. Civ, though, going to come on by, and there you are. He's going to pick up a free kill, donated over to the Kennen, and that's now the third kill of the game for AHQ.
Yeah, kill handed over to Ziv there on the Kennen, building towards his proto belt to mirror the Silas's. honestly, really sick for him because he didn't even need to pop the Slicing Maelstrom. Just comes in, collects it, and Kongyue, we said, he was the point of weakness for this team. He was the one that is going to get exposed against some of the top teams, and yet, so far, been stellar this early game. 3 successful ganks in 8 minutes.
And that's what we wanted to see in this jungle matchup. We wanted to see them go toe-to-toe, and unfortunately, it seems like River didn't show. And now this Lee Sin's been caught out twice, trying to go for an invade or just trying to, clear out in toward the river. That gives over control back to AHQ onto this Rift Herald, and if they find another quick pick in a lane, that could easily get blown apart.
Yeah, I definitely do have to look at this AHQ comp as being super explosive, super volatile. My main reservation, though, is the fact that Uniboy still isn't unlocked, and we do see an invade.
Oh no, Kanye ends up going on over. Hanabi actually stole away the Slicing Maelstrom. It's going to be a 1-for-1. Kaiwing, though, on a rotate. There comes the 3-man Shockwave, though, coming out from Tank. And it's enough damage to help secure the kill as River finds his first one on the map and gets PSG on the board. Kanye, unfortunately, nowhere to run himself, and Kaiwing going to be a bloodthirsty Bard picking up the second.
Yeah, Kongyue a little bit too deep in tandem with Ysera there for that full commit. A really nice stolen Slicing Maelstrom from Hanabi to seal the deal as he sets up the AHQ threesome in exchange for a huge shockwave coming through from Tank.
You saw there, unfortunately, Blast Cone angle wasn't perfect, but they did see Ziv kind of coming on over, so maybe AHQ felt confident, but a nice roam coming out from the mid laner as well as the support.
Yeah, that trio of AHQ members just getting a little bit too greedy. And this was my main criticism of AHQ's early game so far. Granted, it has been fantastic, but the Zoe hasn't left mid. The Zoe's just been farming against an Orianna, who of course clears a lot more reliably and a lot more safely than she does. And so far, we're really looking to Uniboy to start using the lead he was donated around the 3.5 minute mark, 7 minutes ago.
Yeah, we wanted to see him try and to get unlocked in this lane, and like you mentioned, if he's able to get a solo kill here and there, he can look to roam around and try and get this bot lane rolling, because of course you're running on the Aphelios that you would love to try and just like slingshot into a mid-game spike, and well, PSG, they're able to respond and stem the bleeding as it looked like it was getting a little bit dire up against AHQ here early. Second Dragon, though, going to be spawning here in 10 seconds as Tank just trying to get himself back to safety.
Yeah, and speaking of this Aphelios, we didn't really touch on it so far just because we've had a heavy emphasis on the early game. I'll talk about it in a sec. Okay, yeah, the Aphelios is the late game insurance. The Aphelios is the teamfight carry. The issue is, if you're ever in range to auto-attack here, you're in range to be shockwaved, and that will be a death if Wako isn't super careful.
And that was kind of the main thing that we saw with the Aphelios pick a lot back in spring, and in the early stages of summer here on the PCS, was teams not taking a lot of range in that mid lane and not acting and having a secondary threat onto that carry. River, though, gets a quick tag there onto Kongya. Looks like PSG are going to back off as True Shot Faraz able to get the Trundle down to about 600, but not in threat of being killed.
Yeah, Kongyue does need to take a reset here, but the Herald-empowered recall really gonna give him a lot of speed when it comes to getting back on the map. AHQ, it's a little bit of a clumsy blow-for-blow kind of trade, but end of the day, they don't lose this Drake, they don't lose setup because you just beeline straight for it, and then they can just try that play again in maybe just that little bit more favorable of a situation.
And you do see there, Hanabi starting to get a bit of a push toward the top side of the map. Like we mentioned, both proto belts on the line. I like how pretty much both of them have the exact same idea when it comes to team fights. As that will be a sleepy trouble bubble onto Kaiwing, but he has that magical journey to get into safety.
Credit to Ysera for fishing for a blind Q into 3 people. Ambitious, didn't work out, but ambitious at least. And now AHQ, with that pressure that they got from pushing out Kaiwing, wrestling with a pick, are able to transition into a solid Ocean Drake.
So it looks like PSG,
it timed out.
It timed out, all right. So had to use it, and it's still going to get that charge as in comes the Bard. Ultimate just at the last second, though. Prevents those turret plates from being just shared on over to the side of AHQ.
Suddenly, I do respect the Bard pickup that a little bit more, just because, hey, it shuts down that early Herald power play that AHQ have trended into time and time again. If you want to get towards your 15-minute power spike just that little bit sooner, deny the enemy team from snowballing off of theirs with that crucial Herald play.
Do have to note, though, for PSG, you've given over the first 2 dragons of the game, and it is going to be an Infernal Soul that you now have to worry about. That if AHQ are, again, able to continually get pressure onto the bot side of the map and get control of the pit, could easily start to get that early on. You see, Slicing Maelstrom going to be used. Hanabi has his own, though, as Kongyu wants to go on forward. Kaiwing comes on over, and they're able to take down Ziv before Hanabi goes on down. Kongyu can't finish off the kill. Hanabi, though, nowhere to run, will finally get taken out by the troll, but it will be a 2-for-1 in top lane for PSG.
Yeah, good rotation from the support and jungler of PSG. The 1v1 was cool. It was what we were promised. Ziv, Hanabi, fight to the death, and yet it is PSG that come out ahead. Uniboy finally moves out of mid, but it's too little too late. He got fed that first blood and hasn't done anything with it. Just chilling in mid lane on the Zoe, and then decides to come up when everything is already over.
And that's unfortunately the one downside there when you are going up against a Silas as a cannon. Is sure you have a Slicing Maelstrom, but Hanabi has his own in most cases. Is that ends up turning on their heads. It turns into a 2v1. You do see though AHQ able to get some turret platings down bot, not able to take that first tower though just yet.
And the fact that it's an Orianna with Seraphs, it's such a slow farm-focused early game, and yet you see Uniboy just refusing to be proactive, refusing to move around. Granted, Bard and Lee Sin were between him and the top lane that time, but we need to see AHQ continue to pressure this early lead. If they get this Herald, beautiful, they can use it to get some priority somewhere, maybe crack open that tier 1 mid, and then start moving the Zoe once she doesn't have to worry about that constant onslaught of Orianna wave clear.
The thing is, that's what we need to see come out of Uniboy, because again, this pairing that came over from Mad Team back during the postseason after Worlds, they have always been that main win condition for HQ in the early game, and the fact that Uniboy's been kind of just stuck in his lane, and again, we thought he would be a threat up against Tank. Well, Tank's been able to handle this well, and they just haven't seen any punishment.
Definitely is the case here. Essentially handing the PSG mid laner free scaling on a plate, which is exactly what the champion needs. PSG, they've drafted 2 champs that have tier as a core part of their builds, and yet they're just allowed to freely scale to this point that we said, 15 minutes. That is where PSG decide to turn on the kill switch, and that is where we'll probably see them be the ones to explode the game. River went from 0-0 to 2-2-1. The Lee Sin, now a champion again, and PSG now firmly back in the driver's seat if they want to take a crazy engage or team fight.
Because that's the thing, we're kind of still waiting on Wako, and sure, he will be able to get his first tower of the game, likely on this final push. Not really, actually, is Unified still there to clear it out. But the thing being, Wako, he isn't an AD carry that likes to get hyper-aggressive in lane. He loves just farming away. Rift Herald is going to not get any damage by that Bard ultimate once again, but still, Wako doesn't really come online until he gets his next item, which is still going to be about 4 to 5 minutes when PSG are now ready to start fighting for dragons.
Yeah, PSG definitely ready, and I do have to shout out to Kaiwing there, just shadowing the Trundle. Wherever the Herald goes, I go, holding the Tempered Fate just for that. And now you have no more Heralds to worry about, so you can start being that little bit more creative with your usage of that Bard ultimate. Setup for the Drake in 30 seconds, as you mentioned, gonna be pushing AHQ 1 away from Soul. That mid-game win condition we wanted to see them play towards, because Infernal, beautiful, insane, disgusting amounts of damage. PSG, onus is on them to actually contest this, and with Shockwave, plus decent items on the Ezreal, they could very well potentially do so.
You still see Hanabi pushing into the top lane, but does have teleport available. Civ does too, as Ysera still looking for it, and this could be the setup that AHQ are looking for, as Kaiwing not going to get taken low. A nice soak up coming out there from River, and that's my question here is, if PSG are online, how do these fights want to go if you're an AHQ fan?
Honestly, you play front to back, you kite out the Shockwave, kite out the crazy Lee Sin, and more importantly, use this bulky front line to block Ezreal damage from the Aphelios, basically. Because Aphelios, his weaknesses are his range. If he moves in range to auto, he's shockwaveable. If he moves in range to auto, he's pokeable by the Ez. You need to protect Wako because you live and die by him.
Well, unfortunately, Briz, you did just see Wako ended up fanning his Moonlight Vigil, so that's one ultimate down. Hanabi's already down here, does have himself a quick Nautilus ultimate, and nice job by Kaiwing, able to interrupt Kongyu trying to go for the seal. That does secure the Dragon in favor of PSG, but AHQ want to try and make it. Get on top of Tank, try and take him down. The cleanse is there. Is it going to be enough damage? Yes, it is, as Ziv is able to find it. Wako, though, on their side, gets himself ulted by Hanabi, but now Unified the next target here for AHQ. And even though they lost out on the Dragon, they will find the victory during the team fight.
Infernal Rift almost delivering Unified to safety, but the pillar on top of the blast cone. Really beautiful play coming through from Kongyu, who had been criticized, who had that question mark, and who has taken control of this early game for AHQ. The only thing is, this Drake was secured because of the Bard. You said Kaiwing, MVP worthy, Bard ult there. Stunning play from the Bard, but it's not enough to save the team fight.
And you can see when the team fights are scattered like this, PSG don't really know what you want to do, because you want to try and get Tank in a position where he can lay down that ultimate into a choke point. And like you mentioned, beautiful job from Kongya, able to prevent that blast cone. And now Civ also online, picking up his Morellos off those 2 kills.
Yeah, once the Orianna's kind of out of the fight, when she's got that big target mark above her head, especially when you're looking at an Ezreal with no Triforce, he's building Gauntlet, so you can kind of ignore his damage at least for a little bit. His Muramana also not stacked up yet either. You can just shut out the Orianna. Silas and Lee Sin were floating off to the side like, I don't know what we... Like they were like, oh, what do we do now that we don't have a Shockwave to set up for? Answer is not much of anything, as PSG are just completely scattered and taken down by AHQ's aggression.
So there you are. AHQ are able to find a team fight finally after dropping a couple here and there, and works out in their favor. We'll see if PSG can try and realign themselves ahead of the next Dragon, which again, 3 minutes. As AHQ, anytime they take that Drake, it does force PSG to have to worry about that soul point that will be looming over the horizon, especially when you're going up against something like a Zoe and Aphelios. A ton of damage that can scale back up now that Uniboy has also started to come online with that Ludens.
Definitely do need to be more than a little bit concerned about the AHQ team fight potential here if you are PSG, especially if they can get on top of Tank again. Tank cleansed and flashed in that previous engagement, and that did not work out for him. Now even more vulnerable.
You saw Unify just get shunked on down. River has to be careful where he steps. Dredgeline going to take him on back. Kaiwing tries to get the ultimate, but it's too late, and now Wako on the board, taking down River. And you see Hanabi was looking for a flank, but Civ was there to deny him with his ultimate. And another tower taken here by AHQ.
Side note, but I just realized his name is Uniboy, and AHQ's logo is a unicorn.
Yes. Maybe it was Destiny.
Yes.
Maybe it was Destiny.
Maybe it was. That being said, pretty impressed with how AHQ have navigated the past couple of minutes. They did lull after getting a sizable lead, and yet now they're starting to be proactive again. The Zoe not really picking up too much in terms of kill contributions, but the sheer pressure, the threat, other bubble, other Q, and even rotating the cannon here, just good decisive play coming through from AHQ because they see Orianna's top, she has no TP, she has cleanse. Let's punish that by grouping. And AHQ excel at these crazy 5v5 skirmishes.
And you know who started to now scale up for these 5v5s? The fact that you have Wako on his Runehands now complete, as well as his boots upgraded, 50% crit chance onto that Aphelios, can start dealing out damage, especially if Uniboy is able to start knocking down people early with some good paddle stars.
Definitely do have to keep in mind that Uniboy is very conditional in his damage, does need to be able to attack you from 2 screens away, and can't really fight if Silas is in his face, if Lee Sin is securing a big Shockwave engage. But again, PSG's team fight lives and dies by tank Shockwave, and that's why AHQ know they can take down this Orianna.
And they're looking for this Baron here as you have the gun set up for the Aphelios, 6,000 health. We'll see whether or not River can get there in time. Kaiwing does have that Tempered Fate, though. It does prevent much from happening on the side of AHQ, and that alone is going to be enough to dissuade them from continuing on to the Baron.
Yeah, in future, we do need to see Kongwe start to stack himself on top of whatever neutral objective this AHQ lineup are contesting, so that Kaiwing can't just freely ult the Trundle and not the Baron or the Dragon. It's Speaking of dragons though, 10 seconds on that next Infernal will be pushing AHQ to within 1 Drake of that game closer of an Infernal Soul point.
And you see that Prio opens up the mid lane, so now PSG have to deal with it themselves, but should at least be seeing Tank and Kaiwing at least be able to roam on back. Dragon is going to get started up here by AHQ, but they do decide to back off, and now it's kind of that waiting game. Who's going to be taking what? Kaiwing has ultimate available. Watch for that bar to be either that main disengage or that main point of attack. Kongya, though, was not caught out, as now Kaiwing, without that ultimate, can only throw Qs. Unfortunately, he's not targeting. Now it's that 50-50 in the pit. River versus Kongya, who's got it? It goes on over to River, but he gets dredge lined immediately. Two-man Shockwave, though, onto Civ. He gets exhausted, and unfortunately, the Slicing Maelstrom is just out of reach of his primary targets. Shut down over to Tank, and PSG able to now start pushing forward onto the back line of AHQ. Wako gets himself back to safety. Kaiwing getting maybe a little bit too aggressive as Tank also takes the magical journey. Unipoints from the side, maybe getting too close for comfort, forced to flash away.
Hanabi stealing that depth charge for good measure there, locking up Uniboy and really just putting the pressure down onto AHQ. Siege is unrelenting from PSG here though as they continue to pressure and may even just look for a bit of a reset. Never mind, we troll. That being said though, good secure on this. Lee Sin has an execute on his Q. I feel so bad for Kongyue. Has to sidestep the Bardo, gets kicked out of the pit, still gets in there, but loses the Drake anyway because Sonic Wave Resonating Strike is such a clean execution of the objective. And look, Hanabi basically saying, no fight for you, Uniboy. You can't play this one. AHQ, bam, that dream team fight out of the picture.
And you can see just how impactful Civ actually needs to be now when it comes into these river fights. Because again, just out of range by that Slicing Maelstrom, and like you mentioned, Hanabi acting as that buffer between him and the rest of the squad, keeps them safe. And PSG now able to delay out that soul point, actually now starting to threaten their own if they're able to claim the next one.
Yeah, and I'm looking towards Tank as again just landing really, really good shockwaves. You saw as soon as Wako moved into auto attack, he ate that to the face. By the time Ziv came in for the hero play, the exhaust came out, Kaiwing created a lot of space as well, and Isera
gets caught out, is going to get just ganged up upon. Exhaust comes out though onto Hanabi, a nice kick on back, but still not enough damage. Finally it rains on through, but still, Wako is there with the flamethrower, almost able to take down River, but decides not to. Hanabi though, wants to jump in on Ziv, maybe a little bit trigger happy himself, as Wako now almost gets taken down himself. Able to get back to safety though, as PSG prevent the push any further.
Yeah, issue is that unless PSG start getting more picks, it's really, really difficult for them to make a convincing case for this Baron. If you funnel into kind of an enclosed space versus a cannon comp, it is going to be all doom and gloom there. Good flanks coming out from PSG, really beautiful timing on the Silas combo to follow up from the Hourglass breaking off of the end of the Bard ult. And just good reads by PSG. The issue is, even if they got that pick, it was just a pick. They didn't get anything else for it.
And back we go into that cycle now, trying to lay down vision. If you're on the side of AHQ and reclaim, I guess, back bottom of the map control, if that's what they're aiming for. Still, though, Colonel in 2, Baron still available. And it kind of feels like we're starting to hit a little bit of a lull state when it comes to this one, Chris.
I don't know how to feel about this one, 04, because the Lee Sin was like, oh, you're playing Trundle, the supportive jungler? Well, let me tell you about supportive jungle items. Knight's Vow gonna be that rush for River here. Gonna keep Kaiwing alive. Yeah, it's bound to Kaiwing. You see that little grey thing attached? The tether? Unified, rather. Oops. Kaiwing's a carry too, though. Look at this Bard go.
He's not afraid to step up into the action. Has that ultimate available again once more for this Baron as HQ do start up. Wako taking some decent damage up front as now Temper Fate is going to be used trying to split back the fight. Isn't going to land though onto any of the carries, and PSG decide just to walk away.
Yeah, definitely do have to be super conscious of the fact that AHQ can still take this fight, though. A lot of big commitment from PSG here. They still have the Shockwave, so HQ do have to be careful about how much they cluster. Try and get some Zoe poked down, and then take a big engage.
saw there Paddlestar connects onto River, but still not really a whole lot of damage with that bubble. Does have his Void Staff, so if he is able to land a combo into Unified, will take him out of the fight. You do see AHQ not afraid to step on forward, just trying to get priority in that mid lane and force PSG to have to come to them in the pit.
Alright, Opal, that's the question though. Does the Zoe combo take the Ezreal out of the fight, or does he live with 12% health because this Knight's Vow is on him? River, though, may be on this Baron fairly soon if he can get in the pit.
4,000 health onto the Baron. River nearby. Civ has an idea. Q is going to land. River has nowhere to run. Gets stunned up immediately. Shockwave, though, is going to land from the kick. 2,000 health over onto the Baron. Can he make the play? He steals it away from AHQ! And River, you can deny him entrance, but he will not relent. Meanwhile, though, AHQ, they want to take down bodies. They want to prevent this buff from being even used as the bubble going to land back onto tank. Dredgeline eaten by Unified. He's such a bro himself on the Ezreal. And now Kongyu still trying to step forward. Wako still alive. Unified flashing up forward, and he gets the shutdown. 2v2. Bubble lands. Uniboy lines him up, but Unified is still alive. Now trying to kite back. Kongyu can't take him down. Triple kill to Unified, the lone member on the map.
9 members dead between these two teams here, and it is Unified that stands alone. Kongyue with the near hero play, and yet this was River's riff. His Baron secure here was stunning. You have Ziv running interference. You have Ziv locking this Lee Sin down. Northful Assault over the wall as well, and yet AHQ peel off of the Baron. Just commit to it while the Lee Sin is unable to get in there. And yet they wait long enough that Lee Sin can get in there, can get the steal. And yeah, sure, Bouncer Trundle is like, yeah, do I have a club for you? But Lee Sin takes away the Baron, takes everything. AHQ, rough fight.
And this is also a fight where Unified gets hit by a Dredgeline mid-fight and somehow still survives. And we come back to this. Uniboy, just not enough damage, and Tank returning the favor earlier in the fight, getting that shield on in time to help save the Ezreal and keep the Baron buff alive for PSG.
I like how I was like, the advantage Ezreal has over Felios here is that he can damage him from a distance, take him down. And Unified's in there, in melee range, just free casting on people, going crazy with the auto attacks. Insane amounts of damage, good confidence, and PSG now, with that lone Baron buff, could push for this.
You do see, though, they were also able to, during the replay, Unify went down alongside River off the respawn, picked up their third Dragon stack, and now look for that Infernal Soul coming up in 4 minutes. And like you mentioned, with this Baron buff, we'll see whether or not they're able to crack anything. Only 40 seconds, and Unified has to be in the lane for it to work.
Super poetic is the fact we're seeing mirrored scorelines from both marksmen here. Wako and Unified both stepping up after fairly quiet early games, and yet it's the rest of the components around them that really need to make the magic happen. Ziv needs to hit a beautiful Slicing Maelstrom. Tank needs to hit a beautiful Shockwave.
Montebi can't get caught out himself. Kongyu is on the hunt. Meanwhile, though, Kaiwing and Unified make a roam. A nice double man sub is going to land. In comes the Slicing Maelstrom from Hanabi. They get the Shockwave onto Uniboy. River finishes off the kill with a Dragon's Rage. And there you go. 1 member down for AHQ.
Cool commitment onto Hanabi there.
Kaiwing finds himself the Tempered Fate into the stun once more, and Unified is on a rampage, and there you go. Wako can't survive the damage, gets out the Moonlight Visual, and sure, they're low health bars, but they are not kills as PSG look to try and crack open the base.
Wako on the Aphelios looks for the 1v5 and gets 5v1. Kaiwing the catalyst of that play. Kaiwing the driving force behind PSG's onslaught, and it doesn't stop here.
And someone has to make a play. Civ needs to get his home guards. He has Flash available. He has Slicing Maelstrom. The base is going to be taken if he doesn't go for the play, but the dredge line isn't even available. The knockup came out from Hanabi once more, and unfortunately, AHQ, they have to watch the base go in shambles. There's a Slicing Maelstrom, but Civ, you're too damn late as PSG will close out the game.
AHQ had everything going for them in that early game, and they didn't do anywhere near enough with it. Kongyue, early game of his life, early game of his split. Really stunning Trundle play from a non-playmaker champion, and yet unable to close, unable to really do anything with that massive lead, and PSG, you have to credit them with weathering that storm and taking favorable fight after favorable fight.
Yeah, and it came down to, again, just team fight execution over there, and the amount of resources, you saw it back during that Baron play where River, he had Civ on top of him. You had that Kennen dedicating his ultimate and just his presence to try and prevent River from getting into the pit. It still wasn't even enough. It wasn't even River landing the Q onto the Baron. It was just a straight up smite v smite, and it worked out, and that's going to be one Kongyu wants back.
That was so frustrating to watch though, because you saw the Nautilus ult committed over the wall. You saw Kennen just persistent in getting on top of this Lee Sin, and yet they peel off the Baron. Wrong time. Even there was no threat of the shockwave because the shockwave was on the Kennen as well. It was all out of the pit, and yet AHQ, the fumble in the communication, the missed play when it mattered, really just sealed the deal on their fate this game.
I also want to highlight there, especially in the last final push down through the bot lane, the fact that Kaiwing on this Bard, again, highlighted when it came to objective play, but also catching out those members on that final push, as that's what we're going to go ahead and take a look at how this game closed out.
Yeah, so a huge commitment onto Hanabi, who gets kind of stuck between a pillar and a hard place. Yeah, on the side you see Uniboy being assassinated even through the exhaust. Fairly unlucky. And then yeah, the re-engage, just stunning play from Kaiwing here. Good confidence from PSG, said, look, they might be an entire screen and a half away, but we have the mobility and we have the follow-up potential.
An easy lockdown onto those key targets helps secure PSG the victory there, and unfortunately, I wanted to see Ziv make that call to try and make a final stand before the Nexus towers were coming out, and considering the fact he was an AP Kennen, could have easily at least prevented PSG from maybe finishing, but it was just way too late.
Not only that, I would have liked to have seen him just pop the Maelstrom on top of the Bard ult there to create space for the Aphelios to actually play the game, because you saw Wako pumped out a ton of damage on the tail end of that play, could have potentially turned it around, and yet boom, bam, just left to his own devices, left alone. And AHQ, uncharacteristic mistakes coming through from their solo lanes. Look at that Zoe damage. She got first blood. She got spoon-fed a lead and did absolutely nothing with it.
And it's a rare occurrence here from Uniboy, where, like, if you told me in spring that Uniboy would get a early kill onto a Zoe and he ended up with losing his lane phase pretty much because he would not be able to do much else, didn't roam around, I called you crazy. But that seems to be the case here in summer, and MVP, it was either going to one of the bot lane of PSG, and it's going to go on over to Kaiwing on that Bard.
Yeah, really pleasantly surprised with how aggressive these Bard rotations were, how good the usage of that ultimate really was to shut down any kind of Herald play. And yeah, that final engage, really stunning play from the PSG support, showing you why this Bard was indeed first pick worthy for them even on red side.
Yeah, there was some questions from that draft, but nonetheless, PSG, they're going to be pretty happy themselves, and with that too, we get to go ahead and take a quick look toward our standings before, of course, our interview, which it is going to be PSG now 11-4, tied with Machi and still with a game in hand. We are going to go though to an interview with Kaiwing alongside Pat.
真的是非常恭喜你们这一队是在这一场，我觉得可能说是硬战当中赢下了 AHQ 哦。那我们这边有几个问题想要针对你做采访。就是你们这一场的巴德哦，就是也应该说是你的巴德连续2次定住了外塔来防止对方预示者的进攻，而且后续几个大绝的释放也是非常的精彩。你平常是怎么样练习这个英雄呢？有什么诀窍吗？可以分享给大家。
So we saw that he used Bard's ult 2 times in this game to stop their outer turret from taking away by AHQ. So we know that it's very hard to use Bard's ult, and it's a big risk to use it in the game. So how do you normally practice Bard and its ult?
这种的话，就是可能要靠平常的可能积分训练呢，跟可能在团练时候遇到的一些情况而经验累积下来，才导致到今天2次的先锋都有挡下来了。
So I think normally you have to practice it a lot in solo queue, and also that you meet a lot of problems in the scrims and normal practices. After all the experiences that you can gain in your practice and the scrims is how I am able to use the 2 ults in the beginning of the game in this game.
好，那第二题想要问就是拿上这场比赛之后，其实也算是给这个 PSG 一个定心丸，因为毕竟你们是接连打败了这个 J Team 以及这个 AHQ，那摆脱之前的连败低潮之后，可不可以给你们就是在这边给自己一个在季后赛的时候设定一个目标？
So now that you won Taipei J Team and AHQ consecutively, your team is looking really well right now. And so can you give yourself a goal in the playoffs?
上个礼拜的话就实在太可怕了，就差一点就3连败了。然后，还好是我们有经过很多的一些讨论呢，跟检讨，从而去这个礼拜就把我们上个礼拜所犯的问题去改善了之后，能进季后赛的话，我想第一个目标就是说，因为春天的时候我们是没办法在胜部留下来的，就是春天的时候是要掉在那个败部，所以这一次夏季赛的话。我觉得要从胜部站起来。
So last week was very scary because we were on a 3-game losing strike, and we did a lot of review after that. And this week we were able to come back. So my goal for the off season is that because in the spring season we lost in the upper bracket, so this time our goal is to just make the upper bracket first.
OK， 那也谢谢凯文接受我们的采访，也希望你在接下来的表现中也能够如你所期望的，就是留在，就是维持这么好的成绩，然后以胜部。
I think that's a fair goal to have here for PSG, not wanting to have to fight their way back up through the lower bracket to try and get into that championship seeding, where again, for our 2 world seeds, if you're able to make the finals, that is key, and it looks like PSG, they already have set eyes for that final. We are going to go ahead, though, and take a short break. When we come back, of course, it's going to be our 5th game of the day. Machi Esports taking on Hong Kong Attitude.
CTBC Bank is Taiwan's top financial institution, but we're not stopping there. We're crafting an international brand and already have over 260 outlets in 14 countries. We are by your side, ready to embrace the future.